Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Again, as Steve mentioned, this is sort of a town hall or an informational session for everybody to learn a little bit more about the partnership that we want to enter into with Crossroads down the street. Before I start, just to let you know, David Schumack has been gracious enough to tape this for us. So we'll make this available on the internet for people who were not able to make it today. People want to see it later. It'll be available, but just so you know, if you're asking a question or making a comment, that it will be taped.
So be careful.
Thank you, Steve, for handing those out. Again, a mailing went out. Most people hopefully got it on Friday or Saturday and had a chance to glance at it. And what this is really is a partnership between ourselves and Crossroads. It is not a merger. Our budget stays the same as it always has. We vote on our budget just as we always have, and Crossroads does as well. This is more a partnership for us to better the community that we both live in and to serve it in the name of Jesus Christ. Both councils and the leaderships of each church have met many times to go over what this will look like. And both councils have voted and agreed forward to go with the motion that we will ask you as a congregation to vote on in our December annual meeting. And that motion says the councils of Crossroads and St. Paul's Lutheran churches together move that both congregations enter into partnership with one another for an initial time frame of 5 years is outlined in the St. Paul's Crossroads vision document and the accompanying staff cost document. The partnership will be reevaluated for renewal, adjustment, or dissolution by April of 2024 at the latest. So, how did we get to this point? What does this all involve? And I think when we met, at least for me, when we met as a council on Tuesday and went over it, I think that the bottom line for us really is all the mission that's listed out on this sheet here, I think kind of spells out best of all the different things that we can do together to move our mission forward. I won't go through each one of those. You're able to look at and read those. But I thought maybe I'd start with Steve a little bit. We could go into the very beginnings of where this started and kind of how we've evolved from here.
Thanks, Scott. Again, just thank you for being here and asking questions, or at least listening today. Where this came from, I just want to step back for just a couple of minutes to talk about how did we get here. And the bottom line is, this is your fault. Every one of you, when you called me to be your pastor, said, we want to redevelop into this neighborhood. We want to make sure that we are more focused on the people right here. And you ended up doing that. And so what we found is that this ministry grew very rapidly in and through St. Paul's and into this neighborhood. So that's been wonderful. One of the things that happened a long time ago, some of you were a part of this, we started a mentor group for some of our kids in need who are at the middle school. And instead of just doing that at St. Paul's, we did that through St. Paul's and Crossroads. And as I started to bridge those two congregations with that, and we got volunteers from both places, I thought, why the heck are we not doing more of this? Why aren't more things happening like this, where we can partner together to touch the lives of our families, especially in the Amherst schools, through these two congregations? So what has happened here, because of the growth at St. Paul's and the change that has occurred and the depth of the ministry that's happening here, well, I realized three things over the last few years. Number one is that we need more space to do ministry. We are flat out maxed out. You know, this morning it was great. I came into the church and one of the bathrooms was just sort of a mess. And I was like, you know what? That's great. And I know some of you get annoyed by that. But that's not because we have a bad cleaner. It's because the building's used so often, so many times, we would have to have someone cleaning it every single night at the end of the night because someone is here all the time. With the way that the school has approached us about expanding this mission into the Family Support Center, we don't have the room to do that here, so partnerships make even more sense. as we looked at that. The second thing was we need to offer a different type and maybe a second type of worship service through St. Paul's. There's people that don't like the style of worship that we do on Sunday morning, and they're really moved by more of what we'd call contemporary service with maybe a band leading it. And that just doesn't work in that space, and that's not what our mission is here. So it works very well to partner with the church that can do that. And third thing is, we're 1.2 miles apart. We don't need to be competing like this, and we don't need to be offering the same services to the community. We need to better coordinate how we can do this and be better stewards of our dollars. So that's kind of where it came from. The only reason we put all these documents together was because we all like, when we step into an uncomfortable zone, something new, we like to have some things that help us out. I hope they help you. I hope it didn't make it more confusing. What we tried to show you with the staff costs was that we're not merging any finances, we're not putting into one big pool, anything like that. We're going to just keep it, St. Paul's pays certain people, Crossroads pays certain people. Simple as that. Which is a huge logistic breath of fresh air, and talk about reducing stress as we figured all that out. The rest, as Scott outlined, are just the amazing ways that you'll see these words of meeting the spiritual, emotional, and physical needs of our community here on that third page. They really kind of emphasize how instead of us both offering the same things and kind of maybe not doing them well on our own, we could probably do them better if we did them together at one site or the other. And the last piece just outlines some of the roles and responsibilities that the staff people will have. One of the things that I've learned about the church in my last 15 years of ministry was that we become much more efficient and effective in our communities when especially our pastoral staff can focus on the things that they're good at instead of having to be a generalist and try and do everything for everyone. It just doesn't work like that anymore. So one of the greatest things that we would have is St. Paul's would get the benefit, along with Crossroads, of a multi-full-time staff, along with part-time staff, that would be able to lead even more ministries going on here, and disciple and train you to lead even more of the ministries that God wants you to be leading. So that's kind of the background. That's how we got here. I don't know if you have taken a look at this and have specific questions. Do we want to hit just an open question and answer session, or?
Maybe just as a bridge to the last statement you mentioned, Steve, is to let people know a little bit about what's going on at the leadership at Crossroads. We have Vicar Adam and Pastor Adam there now that will be transitioning out. Maybe you could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, we've been working on this for 2.5 years, and as we started to realize that the pastor was called for a 3-year term, and Adam Ahrens, who used to be a member here, is called as the intern for 3 years. They would both be leaving roughly around May 2019. So we've been using that as our sort of time clock of how can we possibly do this? Because the reality is, I shared this with the council, right now the group of seminarians that's graduating from all of the ELCA seminaries, of people that are unrestricted and can take a call anywhere, there's 44 available in the entire ELCA. And just in first call churches, which is churches with usually under 50 in worship, there's about 280 right now that need pastors. So Crossroads is going to have a huge void. We have other congregations. My dad's out preaching at St. John Lancaster. They don't have a full-time pastor at all, a consistent pastor. So we're in a real void for leadership. What this helps us do is become a place where we can be more attractive to a leader that comes in, that we need that leader to have specific gifts to do this. That's what pastors are looking for. They want to do something specific that they're good at, as opposed to going to have to do everything.
Question, go ahead, please.
Are you saying that you're going to be a pastor here, or there will be a new pastor at Crossroads?
There'll be a second pastor at Crossroads. So my main areas you'll see here will deal with the things that are over here. And
the existing pastor retiring?
No, their 3 years will be up. He'll move on to another call somewhere, and Adam Ahrens will become ordained at that point once he receives a call, and they've made the decision to probably move out back west where Adam's family is, so they won't be in the area at all. So we're losing Kristen too, which we know is coming, and she's done such wonderful work for us with our youth. That's where you'll see a lot of the youth work would now be in our third full-time position in that person's area.
What's that going to do for you to be the pastor here? Will you be when they're without a pastor, are you going to be going over there sometimes to preach and we're going to be with somebody else?
Yeah, we're not 100% sure how that will look because our goal would be to get this set up by August 2019. So if Adam is there, the Adams are there until May and June, they're probably going to have a summer over there where they're going to need some coverage. We have deacons here. We've got this old guy who's a pastor that's a part of this church. We've got some assets that we can continue to work with them. So I would become what's called their transition pastor, which is what happens to any congregation, whether they're in partnership or not. St. John's Lancaster has a transition pastor that schedules the pastors to go there. So there's other pastors that are retired or not in a call that they can go and preach there to help out until we get that third person there. So it wouldn't pull me away from Sunday mornings at St. Paul's.
It won't.
It will not.
So Steve, you mentioned 44 graduating St. Mary's. Is there any reason why you might think this attractive enough that you could get somebody who is not a new graduate that might be inclined to come and give us something more potential benefit with their experience?
Yeah, Crossroads is working through what's called the MSP, the Ministry Site Profile. So that's part of the work that we've been doing. They'll approve that at their meeting. We have meetings, both churches, at December 2nd. Once that ministry site profile is done, they give it to the whole ELCA, and that will help us go out to find the right person. We'd like to have a female that's younger than me, which is pretty easy. So that's kind of our target person. We've done a lot of work on how to be most attractive to the most amount of people here and lead certain ministries that I'm not good at women's ministry. I am terrible at comfort or leadership. Not that that's a women's ministry. I didn't mean that. I'm going to stop talking. Any other questions? No, so it will help us, again, because we're a more targeted role, that this pastor who might be passionate about contemporary ministry, but wants nothing to do with more of a traditional feel, that has that energy for it, there will be people excited about this that would want to come and lead a church that had a service like that. So it helps us.
Question?
Who's on the logistics team for my church?
I was just going to say, Nick, could you tell us who's on the logistics committee? Because I know Nick is.
Myself and Debbie, I believe the two from our church.
Debbie Reagan.
Oh,
And then there's
Todd.
Then there's Todd.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 or 3 people from Crossroads, correct?
Yes. Yeah, these 3 teams have been meeting for the last, 9 months or so, and looking at certain aspects of this. Logistics helped us move from saying, hey, let's just throw a bunch of money together and have one site to pay, to realize that's kind of a mess. Let's keep this all separate. So we've had a lot of people looking at some very specific areas to make sure that we can do this so that everyone can be as comfortable as possible as we move forward.
Jamie.
And because of the criteria for Crossroads pastor, is that why there's nothing under youth for projected 2020?
So the question was, because of this situation, is that why there's nothing under youth for 2020? Our youth position will merge into the youth and family minister. That will all be done by that person. You can see a little bit of that breakdown in that staff position. You'll see youth group communities as the #1 priority for them. So that person will really be geared towards our youth, not only in our churches, but also in the school, to lead that mentoring group, to be doing more groups in the school, to help out with the family support center that'll be housed at Crossroads. Dave.
Might this also allow for some cooperative adult education?
100%.
Yeah.
Might this allow for cooperative adult education? It would be wonderful. Right now, the first step that we've tried is our midweek Bible study. Our daytime Bible study is now over at Crossroads this year on Mondays. It's a little tricky because some of our Tuesday people, it wasn't good to do Monday, so we had some adjustments, plus about half of our people got ill. By the way, I should have announced this at church. Dolores Shear came out of hospice. She said, see ya. So it was bad. In fact, she came out of hospice on the week that we read the Lazarus text coming out. I'm calling her Lazarus now. But that group has had some people that are dealing with illness, so we haven't had many of our folks over there. But Mary helps lead that. So we thought, rather than doing a Bible study with 6 people over there and 7 people over there, why don't we do this together to build more of that community? So yeah, adult education will be an area that we can do more together as well. Barbara?
I hate to be mercenary, but Crossroads, are they firm that they think they can handle the finances for 5 years and going in here?
They feel very comfortable with the finances that any church does, which is we're all sort of uncomfortable. The reality is, and I don't know if you want to speak to this about the finances?
So that's a great question because that came up at Council Tuesday. And, you know, obviously with getting a new pastor there, they need to reinvigorate their membership and go forward. But if things didn't go so well, I mean, from a financial standpoint, I mean, they have a large endowment there, larger than what we have, that can help support them as a bridge for a while. And if things didn't go well and down the line, you know, they end up exhausting their funds, then it is what it is. We have no responsibility in that and no financial responsibility in that. So I think your question's a good one. Hey, how is this going to look for them going forward? So it is for a new minister for that congregation, which is relatively small. It's going to, you know, new membership is going to have to be a fairly dynamic thing for them.
What is their active membership over there?
I don't know, their question was active membership. I don't know that they track members like we don't, but they have a Saturday service and a Sunday service. They have about 15 on Saturday night and about 25 to 35 on Sunday morning. So it's a very small congregation. We'll have to ask questions about what's the best way to do that. Is Saturday viable over there right now? Is Sunday, you know, so there's going to be a lot of questions that will have to be asked, but that'll be part of the exciting redevelopment of what they're doing.
How much a timely factor is it that we are retiring our mortgage?
None.
Okay.
Yeah, does it factor in that we're retiring our mortgage? That probably had more to do with being able to bring me on full-time at this point, as opposed to this partnership. One thing that, I don't know if we outlined it as well, and Scott just spoke to the endowment that they have. They sold 2 churches. They were part of 3 churches that sold 2 of those buildings, put them in an endowment, now they're at one site. They're operating from a position of financial strength. I met with a pastor this week who I actually was talking about being a part of this down in Baltimore. And she's at a redevelopment site in Baltimore, and she said their church has $12,000 in the bank. Kurt, are you nervous? $12,000. But so we're not operating from that sort of position at all. And what I think we're actually doing is operating proactively. Once they would get any smaller at Crossroads, they're really going to be in a super challenging bind. This is something that might infuse life at a perfect time. We're actually hoping that this might be a model for our Synod International Church to start looking at churches to say, how do we partner more of these together like that so that they can thrive again around a mission and a vision in their community, as opposed to doing what maybe Ascension and St. James and Cleve Hill, these 3 churches did, was just merge together so they could kind of maybe close more slowly. We're building around mission here. And you'll see that a lot of the new exciting pieces will be happening over there with Family Support Center and a new type of service. So we're hoping that that will really pump some energy into that community over there.
Is this a unique situation in the ELCA, or has this been done before?
I talked with the Director of Development for the ELCA, and they don't operate this way. They do either mission starts or redevelopments, which in the ELCA right now, the way that the ELCA does this with their plan, they're failing at a 30% clip. So they asked, do you want our help in this? I said, no, why would I want your help? You're failing. You just said you're failing at a 30% clip. Thanks for your help. But we're looking at this at a model that, again, could be something that would be helpful for even churches right here in Western New York to partner together, share staff that will do dynamic things at different places, as opposed to trying to do everything on their own and burning themselves out.
There was another question over here.
Yeah, what's the Family Support Center?
Thank you. What's the Family Support Center? Several schools in our area, the districts, have something called a Family Support Center, not a Family Sports Center. The way I talk so fast, it sounds like sports. It's not. Although that would be a cool thing, wouldn't it? Family Support Center is a place that families and the kids, parents and the kids, and in some situations the staff at the school, can go to find proactive and reactive mental health care especially. So that above and beyond, the guidance counselors and the staff in the school are maxed out. The number of things that they have to do. Some schools don't have mental health staff at all. We're blessed in the Amherst district that we actually have mental health staff. Clarence has eliminated theirs. Many of these other districts have had to take them out of their budgets. So we have some social workers and some psychological staff that do have some work, but they just do not have enough hours. So they're referring out to these random places that they're not able to follow up. If we had one place for our district that all the families would be able to go to that, then we'd also be able to do the follow-up and the mentoring of families and do, as a church, the spiritual care so that as mom and dad or someone brings little Jimmy to have some counseling, they can sit in an area that kind of looks like a prayer room, which is what it's going to look like, but they can kind of breathe a little bit and have some time to reduce their stress level. So it's going to be a really nice partnership of holistic care for our families. It'll also help us do the proactive training for our teachers, our district on things like drug use or whatever the next thing is going to be. We can do presentations where we have the sanctuary set up to be able to do those things over at Crossroads. Did I answer the question enough?
Yeah, are you going to be hiring professionals? I mean, social workers?
Right, the school right now is simultaneously with our plan working on a development plan to launch this, so I meet with them periodically. So they will have paid staff that they'll put into this building, but we'll also have a mix. It'll be everything from some of our social work staff going over and doing extra hours at night if they'd like to, and also outside people that we bring in. For instance, bless you, my wife might come over as a licensed clinical social worker to do hours in that building so that we can have more people who are geared for children and families.
Now, you said this was going to be a 5-year situation. If they get a pastor of their own and get back on their own feet, will we still be involved with them?
It's a good question. 5 years, are we stuck with this 5 years? That's one of the things that I've been a stickler about this. We on one level, some folks wanted to say, well, why don't they just hire their own pastor and we'll just go together? Well, what's going to happen there is there's not the buy-in and the commitment for us to do this. For this to really work together, for us to maybe move all the men's groups over here on Saturday morning, and maybe some of our ladies groups are over there, our Bible study that is right now. I want a commitment to know that this is going to be a joint ministry, that we're all doing this together, and not for competing so that eventually they're just going to launch and go, and now St. Paul's has kind of got a big dent in it. So I've been very careful about that this will give us the opportunity several times during this process to say, it's going great, or hey, we're uncomfortable, let's think about maybe we need to do something else on our own again. We're going to develop a board that will watch over this, that will have representatives from both councils, kind of a common council of sorts, that will periodically meet to review and evaluate and advise on how we can move best into this, or what's working well, what needs to be tweaked. Dave, you have a question?
Couple. I mean, first of all, we're at the end of this 5 year. We're not going to get one of those banners from Russia that says, "Comrades, we've met our 5-year plan." First thing is a comment. I think we should try and keep a record of this because, again, as you noted, what the ELCA has been doing isn't working all that well. So this could set a new path and become a handbook for other areas. And a suggestion, as we move forward with this commonalities working together, we might want to try and do some sort of a survey or whatever of, the schools, the other churches in the areas, whatever, as to what services are needed, so that as we go ahead, we're not doubling over on something, but we might find niches where we can do some good.
Yeah. So Dave's point was make sure that we're asking the community if we're on the right track. What's great about this partnership and the partnership we've had with the school is that they've done a needs assessment fairly recently of this whole area. And you know what the best needs assessment is to use for your church? The one somebody else paid for. So what they found, I went and met with them about a year ago now.
You've got a future in this business.
Yeah, I met with the superintendent, assistant superintendent. I said, if you as the leadership of the school had a building that was wide open for you, that you could do something to enhance and bless the lives of the kids and families in your school, what would it be? And they said, we need a family support center. Our needs assessment has showed us that. Even to the point where we had, in the last year, we've had 2 completed suicides in our district from kids. Last June, an 8th grader. So that impacted the middle school as this person had this happen in June as they ended school, and then it affected the high school as that class came up 1 person short. So those type of wear and tear needs, not just on the kids, but also on the staff. This is going to be something that we'll be able to help them out as well. I've requested a massage person for them. Oh, it's okay, don't. Any other thoughts or questions? We don't need to keep you here.
How do they feel about the bills?
I preached over there and I wore my Bill Stoll last week, so nobody said anything, and I think that's okay. They seem like good folks.
I made it 5 years and 5 months.
Yeah. So in December, we will vote at the meeting with this motion. They'll be doing the same thing. We're hoping and praying that it passes. Either way, the week after, we're going to, Vicar Adams is going to preach here. I'm going to preach there just to make sure that we know no matter what happens here, we're still 1.1 miles away from one another. And we have that Saturday. I hope that all of you are going to come to this caroling event that we're doing together, and it's going to be at Crossroads. So hopefully you can come to that again. It's just another great way that we can do this rather than them doing one and us doing one, even though I know Nick and Nick might do a live nativity here at some point. And Scott's volunteered to help out with that. We'll start with this, but we're already going down that road, so that's really good stuff. Just please keep it in prayer, if you would, that we want to make sure that this whole thing is open to where God's leading us and where the community needs us, and not something that we think we should do. What you see has changed about 48 times. Because what's happened is the Holy Spirit has really kind of brought the right people in to say this, that, and the other thing along the way, which has brought us to a place where we're really excited about it. Any more questions? All right, thank you guys. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Behind you.